Hello, hello, my Let's Keep It Real people. We've been on a roll lately, doing podcasts that you can actually see the person I'm interviewing if you're not driving in your car. So we got Kevin in the house. But before I bring Kevin in, let me just tell you a little bit about Kevin McShan. He is a motivational speaker and journalist. And I was on his show, by the way. He has an extensive history in advocating for inclusive employment for individuals with disabilities. He enjoys having extensive conversations about a variety of topics and considers himself a sports enthusiast. He's the host, holler, of Let's Have This Conversation podcast with the mission of having meaningful conversations intended to move the needle of progress forward. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate it.
Sandy, it's a delight to be with you this afternoon, and I'm excited to engage in conversation.
Yeah. All right. But before we get into it, I asked all my guests, Kevin, one word to best describe your past 30 days, whatever word it is, and why you would pick that word. Any word you want.
Productive.
Oh, productive. Okay, why productive?
Between editing and producing my own podcast and spending time with family and my volunteer commitments have always, Sandy, one of the things I tell people about myself is if I don't stay busy, I don't stay out of trouble. So over the last 30 days, we've completed and edited over 15 podcasts. I had a chance to spend some time with my family over the Thanksgiving Day holiday, and I even found a little bit of time for some R&R myself. So it's been a well-rounded 30 days, and it's been productive as well.
Well, I like that. And I love that part of your productivity is that you spent time with family and friends. All right, so let's tell them a little bit about your Thanksgiving because you live in Canada. So you said you have 2 Thanksgivings?
Yeah, so Thanksgiving for me happens twice a year. As you mentioned, I was originally born and raised in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and that's where I currently reside. For those of your listeners that do not know, the Canadian Thanksgiving is the second Monday of every October, and obviously my mother's side of the family is Canadian and my father's side is American. So I get 2 cracks at Turkey Day every year, and I never complain about it. You can never have enough turkey. Everything in moderation, though, right?
Yeah, in moderation. Now, on both of those dates, does the whole family get together or are they different families?
So yeah, in October, my mother's side of the family, we do Thanksgiving in Canada, and then when the American rolls around, we all hop into a back of an SUV and we go visit my grandparents for Thanksgiving, and we have Thanksgiving with my dad's side of the family in November.
Mm-mm. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun to me. And I love Thanksgiving because here in the United States, it doesn't matter what religion you are or lack of religion, doesn't matter anything. Everyone celebrates Thanksgiving. So I love that part of it.
There's always something to be thankful for, not only
Yeah.
on Thanksgiving, but every day. Isn't that the truth?
It is the truth. Gratitude, man. Wake up with it. It changes your whole outlet. All right. So, Kevin, we talked a little bit when I was on your podcast about you being a sports enthusiast, and you mentioned that. So is there a specific sport, one, that you like participating in, and 2, that you like watching? And are they the same?
No. So I'll give you a quick story. So I was born, sadly, as you know, with cerebral palsy. So one of the ways that I stay active is I'm an active swimmer, and I also like lifting weights and walking. So that's sort of the part of my life that helps me to stay active. I always live by the motto that always active. I always challenge myself to be at least 10 minutes active activity every day, whether that's lifting weights, walking, or simply doing physiotherapy with the personal support workers that I have that are a part of my team. On the watching sports side, I'm a fan of all sports, but particularly sadly, I'm a long-suffering Detroit Lions fan.
Ah,
Whether they'll win a Super Bowl in my lifetime, who knows? But at least they've surpassed their entire win total from a season ago with 4 wins so far on the season. So, as a long-suffering Lions fan, I always adopt the motto: "There's always next year." So.
you must like Thanksgiving because, I mean, the American Thanksgiving, because there's tons of football.
Yeah, the Lions have participated in Thanksgiving since 1934. So that's the only thing they do that besides losing on a consistent basis. So we look forward to Thanksgiving every year in my house for three reasons: celebrating family, faith, and of course football, of course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So I like that you said, we're going to back up there. You said that no matter what, and I truly believe in this, you make sure you get 10 minutes in of exercise a day. Was it
Every
10
day.
minutes?
Yeah, at least 10 minutes. Most of the time it's longer. But sadly, one of the side effects of my disability, and the specific disability I have, is called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. So one of the side effects of that disability is that my muscles contract faster than most people, and if I don't use my muscle density, and the endurance of my muscles is lessened. So things like walking and swimming and lifting weights and working out are fundamentally important to me because one of the great parts about life is living, and for me, in order to do that for a prolonged period of time, fitness is vitally important to me, not only to manage my disability, but to also include a higher quality of life. So fitness and exercise is important to me. And again, one of the mottos that I live my life by is always active. So it's important to me to be physically active because we all have one life to live, and I always tell people do all you can to maximize your height of potential. And for me, maximizing potential, a big part of that is to be physically and mentally active for sure.
All right. So before you came on, I always reach out to my peeps and ask them, what do you want to ask Kevin? What are some questions you'd like to ask him? And the biggest one they wanted to know, now keep in mind, these are my people, so they all have their morning routine and what gets them in a positive headspace. They want to know what you do to keep in a positive headspace.
Yeah, very. I appreciate that question. Every morning, Sandy, I start my morning by listening to High Hopes, the song from Panic of the Disco. So that puts me in good headspace in terms of physically. I make sure that I've at least had uh, a glass of apple juice every day. Apple juice is my jam, and then I drink lots of water, so water is important to me. But in terms of morning routine, I get up, I check emails, I do my podcasting ritual, reaching out to guests and returning emails. But from a physical perspective, it's all about getting a daily walk in. It's all
Yeah,
about getting my mental space uh, to be where it needs to be. So that's why I listen to High Hopes every day. So
I
it's
love
all
that.
all about getting myself mentally and physically ready to attack today with unbridled enthusiasm, Sandy, because we all have one life to live, and my mission in life is not to be uh, a victim, but to always use
Mm,
my circumstances to my advantage. I always tell people I can either use my
mm.
circumstances for them to work for me, or I can work for my circumstances. And I always try to make my circumstances work for me, because life is all about how you look at it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
all experience adversity in life, and my answer to overcoming adversity and obstacles is in the response, because we're all given a set of tools in life, and it's how we employ them to dictate our success. So I always try to make my circumstances work for me.
Wow, Kevin, that's an unbelievable attitude. And you mentioned that you do speaking engagements, right? You said that you go around doing speaking engagements.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure that's part of your speech. You must inspire a lot of kids or a lot of adults. Who do you speak to? Who's your audience that you prefer?
Yeah, so I typically speak to business people about the importance of inclusion, diversity, and equity, because
Ah,
here in Canada, Sandy, only 59% of folks with disabilities are regularly employed,
mm,
compared to 80% of their non-disabled counterparts. So I talk primarily to business people about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the importance of infusing them into the workforce. And I always tell employers that you have three benefits when you hire someone with a disability. You have increased morale as an organization. You have decreased turnover, and you also have the chance to win over your competition, because folks with disabilities, no matter whether they're physical, mental, or intellectual, they
mm.
overcome obstacles every minute of every day. So it also provides you a competitive edge over your competition when you hire folks with disabilities. So I talk to people about maximizing the potential for folks with disabilities, and
Mm.
maximizing the potential in their own lifestyle as well.
Kevin, I love that. That's amazing. I never even thought of it the way you said. Like it's actually they're looking at it, oh, this might be challenging, but there's so many benefits to them.
Yeah,
So many benefits.
yeah, absolutely. One of the life mottos, there's a sign in my office that says, and the way that I live my life is, inclusion is the gateway to independence. One of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast that I host, and is I wanted to have inclusive conversations that move the needle of progress forward. Because I looked at the world and I said, there are so many factions out there that are trying to greater the divide that already exists. So the goal behind the show that I host, and the speaking engagements that I give, is simple. I want to take all of my energy to bring people together and
Mm,
build bridges of unity, because I truly believe that we have more in common than what sets us apart. So
I agree. I agree, Kevin. And I'm so glad that you're doing the podcast. So, is there any topic recently? I know you love all your guests, I'm sure, and I know you like talking about a variety of things, but is there any topic or anyone you had on recently that you thought, wow, this was incredible? I can't wait to put it out there. Is there anybody or any topic that stands out in your mind?
yeah, I have had the great pleasure of interviewing a lot of people, but one of the recent interviews I did, I interviewed a guy named Mitch Hankins, and Mitch is a mental health advocate, and
Mm,
his overall message, and he's also into fitness and surfing, and doing all of the things that you need to live a healthy lifestyle. But its overall message is that life is a precious gift of opportunity. And when we look at life, it's important to always uh, be a forward thinker in the realm of bringing your whole self to either a conversation, a workout, or just a new challenge in life. So when I think about through the podcast, and I've hosted it now for 2.5 years, and I've had the privilege of interviewing almost 600 people in just
Whoa.
over 2 years. So yeah, but if you're looking for one specifically, I would say Mitch, or one of my recent ones, was one of my favorites.
You know what's really funny? You said his last name is Haggins, right? Haggins.
Hankins, sorry, yeah, Hankins.
Oh, Hankins. Okay. Because I was
Yeah.
like, I just interviewed a Haggins, but it's a different last name. That's, and you're right. I really believe that all your guests that you attract have the same kind of message. They want to make the world a better place. They're trying to make a positive difference. They realize we are more alike than we are different. And all your guests, I'm sure, feel the same exact way.
Yeah, one of the main reasons I wanted to start the show is because I wanted a safe space to have meaningful conversations about a variety of topics that are an objective place to move the needle of progress forward. Because I think when we look at society today, we're so quick to go into our corners and only uh, interact with people who we agree with. And
Yeah.
one of the things that the show has allowed me to do is broaden my perspective on how I look at life and the way we attack different societal problems and come up with solutions. Because, I always say that there's power in the diversity of perspective, isn't there?
Yeah. 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 But here's the difference. When you truly, which I'm sure you are, and I love this, are going in and listening to somebody and truly listening to them with an open mind and not trying to correct them or tell them how wrong they are, but you're really just willing to observe and absorb what they're saying and think about it. That's when the magic happens, like you said, because you are open-minded to another point of view that's not yours, and you're truly trying to understand why they believe the way they believe.
Yeah, and by giving them the space to do that, you can also guide a conversation to get to the root of what they're trying to say. Podcasting's a bit like speed dating. One of the uh, sort of the tenets that are important to me when I uh, interview people is getting to the heart of the matter and getting to what makes them tick as a person and
Yeah.
why they're so passionate about it without sounding like a robot. You can have a list of questions in a podcast and you can ask a question and then just go through the list. But one of the great attributes of any podcaster is the ability to listen, and that can also serve us dividends in the rest of our lives, can it? The ability to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So at the beginning, speaking of listening, you said two of your passions. One of them I know is definitely movement and being an advocate for disabilities, right? But you also threw another one in there, journalism, which is a lot of listening.
Yeah, I always say, people ask me why I'm so passionate about journalism, and I tell them that journalism is like my lifeblood. It's like oxygen to me because it allows me to give people an objective and non-biased space to share their stories and to really get to the heartbeat of what makes them get up in the morning. I always tell people that the only level of expectations you have to meet are your own, because if you don't have their own level of expectations, it's hard to
Mm.
ascend to somebody else's definition of success. For me, success and everybody's portrait of success is different. So one of the things about journalism that allows me to do that is uh, to formulate conversations that allow the needle of progress to be moved forward. So it's all about creating an environment for full
Mm.
inclusion for of people from all walks of life, for sure.
So right now, Kevin, besides your podcast, do you write articles or is your main journalism your let's have the conversation?
Right now, it's on the podcast, but I have written articles for the local news station on the importance of uh, including people in the workforce when we talk about municipal governments and
Mm.
the role of politics and inclusion. I used to write a sports blog before I started the current podcast that I host, but I'm also known for running quotes of the day because I always believe, as an old uh, communications major, Sandy, I went to a school originally to become a sports reporter, so
Ah,
I always believe that. Perfecting your craft takes practice. So I'm constantly writing. I've been called the king of Facebook birthday messages. So anybody that knows me knows that I like to write a novel. One of the running jokes is when people who know me say that I write a novel for a Facebook message when it's your birthday, but
oh,
it's all in an effort to continue to challenge myself to be at least 1% better than I was the day before. So that's the idea
oh.
behind my passion for writing and having conversations through the podcast as well.
Hmm. So, question then. You said that you have a variety of people on your podcast
Mhm.
and you want to have a platform that you can have all different types of people come together and give their viewpoints. And I'm sure you're very good at being open-minded and listening. But was there ever anyone on your podcast that you were like biting your tongue because you really had to go, okay, okay, just listen because you didn't agree with what they were saying? Or has that never happened?
There have been people on my podcast that have challenged my perspective on how to live life and how to look at the world. But the good thing about a podcast is that you can uh, once you establish sort of the genre or the things you want to cover, you can bring people in that have a different perspective. But to answer your question directly, I interviewed an author who is an atheist. He doesn't believe in anything to do
Mm.
with the church and God and all of that stuff. You brought up some interesting points, some of which I agreed with, some of which I was like, maybe not so much. But that's the beauty of conversation, and especially in American culture, like I mentioned earlier. Uh, Today we're so quick to go to our partisan beliefs. If you believe one thing, you're a good person. or if you don't believe this, I can't associate with you. So
Yeah.
the one thing about conversations that I think is being lost today, Sandy, is the ability to disagree with someone respectfully and still carry on a
Yes.
provoking and meaningful conversation. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast too, is because everyone that I have on the podcast, I don't necessarily always agree with, but that doesn't
Love that.
mean that my opinion or my view on a subject can't evolve. So, it's important to have an open mind in life
Mhm.
and in general, and it all starts for me by having conversations.
I'm so glad you said that, Kevin, because recently somebody said to me, who I value their opinion, why did you even give that guest airspace? Because it was a totally different view than mine. And like you said, there were some points I agreed with, but most I didn't. And I feel those difficult conversations need to be had. And again, disagreeing in a respectful way. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, and by the way, if you disagree with someone on a podcast, it's another chance for you to always challenge their line of thinking. And then, I think when you disagree with someone on a podcast, it provides you a chance to really elongate the conversation and
Yeah.
really bring a different perspective to your audience as well. So always, sometimes disagreeing could also be a positive and work out into your favor as well.
Ooh, that's a really good point, Kevin. Very good point. Yeah, you're right. It ends up that something came out of it that you never even imagined, or you learned something, like you said. There were some points you agreed with and some points you didn't. But if you didn't disagree, you would have never found those points out. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So here we are. You're in Canada. I'm in the US, right? You said you're in Ontario.
Yeah, I live in Windsor, Ontario. Yeah.
Okay. I've only been there once. And I think it was is it possible that I did when I was a kid ice fishing? Does it get really cold there? And would I come up there with my friend's father to go ice fishing?
Yeah, especially in northern Ontario, it's a very uh, popular activity because one thing about being Canadian. Now, this doesn't apply to me, but a lot of Canadians embrace the elements and embrace the cold weather, and they're all about the ice fishing, the snowboarding, and the uh, so yeah, it's part of adopting a Canadian culture for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know, but I just remember it's like funny because I remember being a kid going, "Why are they dragging me?" And I was like 12 years old to go ice fishing and freezing. And it was like really cold there. But where right now where you are, is it freezing?
Um, so it's about 30 degrees today. We've got about 39-mile-per-hour winds, and a perfect day to stay in to do a podcast. It's been raining since about 6 o'clock this morning, and
Oh,
it's going to be raining all day. So it's a perfect day to sit in to talk to you and get some exercise in the home space for sure. But one thing I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, Sandy, is that I have an identical twin brother, and Keith and I were both born with cerebral palsy.
oh,
My brother grew out of his when we were 4.5 months old. Um, I so my birthday's in January. We were born 3 months premature, and one of the great lessons and wisdom of my life is uh, the ability to have camaraderie with my brothers. So uh, even though that he grew out of his cerebral palsy, it still affects things like his handwriting and sometimes his range of motion and motor skills.
Mhm.
But one thing that my parents have always instilled in the two of us, Sandy, is set your own level of expectations. And, excuses in our household, Sandy, are deterrents to progress. So that's why I tell people I'm not a huge fan of excuses because those
Wow.
are those are just artificial ways of sort of stunting prosperity. So my parents have always taught us to set our own level of prosperity and our own definition of it, and achieving it comes at different speeds for all of us. So that's why I said earlier, it's important to set your own level of expectations because you have to have a standard of excellence to aspire to from an individual basis before
Yeah.
you can aspire to emulate anybody else.
So I didn't know you could grow out of it. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So my brother grew out of his when we were 4 months old, and I will tell you just a quick story, Sandy. Um, so when I was 9 years old, I had my last operation for my disability, my last hamstring operation, and
Mhm.
after the operation was completed and I had woken up and I had to be discharged from the hospital, the doctor at the time who performed all of my procedures, his name was Dr. Tim Carey, and he took my parents and I into a conference room, and he looked at my parents and he said, "We've done all that we can for your son medically, and he will not be able to walk without the assistance of a walker, and he'll most likely have to use a wheelchair for the duration of his life."
Mm.
And then, I had to go to school the next day, and I met with the principal because she knew that I was headed to London, and she knew that I was going to get that news. And I credit my middle school principal, her name was Dr. Carroll, cruelly about the way I lived the rest of my life. And to this point, I still live this way today. But she looked at me after I had gone through the explanation of what the doctor had said, and she had already knew this because she knew why I was going to London. But she had every person assigned to my file at the time, from
Mm.
teachers to therapists to social workers, and she looked at me, and my parents were there too, and she looked at me and she said, "The only level of artificial expectations that you will have on your life uh, are the limitations that you place on yourself."
Ooh.
So, when I heard that, I was like, I can achieve anything that I want to achieve. It may
Mhm.
not always be aesthetically pleasing, but as long as it's productive,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
it's successful. So I really credit my 9-year-old experience with that middle school principal for really changing the trajectory of my entire life. So I just wanted to share that story with
No, it's a great story, and it also reminds me of the fact that just that one thing that one person said to you had such a huge impact, and that we should remind ourselves of that every day. When we walk out the door in the morning, that you never know, even just with one kind little statement or a smile, how you could change someone's life for their day, for their entire life.
you. Yeah, it's always important to really always put your best foot forward because you never know who's watching, right?
Exactly. So Kevin, so the brother you're talking about, is that the brother before we went on air that you were telling me that got a new job?
Yeah, so Keith recently accepted a job as an assistant professor of sports psychology at Missouri
Oh,
State University. So my brother got his initial degree as a bachelor's degree in human kinetics, and then he went to Eastern. So he started at the University of Windsor. That's where he got his bachelor's degree in human kinetics, and then he got a master's in sports management at Eastern Michigan University, and he got his PhD in sports psychology at
wow.
Wayne State University. So my parents have always raised ambitious children to reach for their own definition of prosperity. So I have an identical twin brother, and I have two other sisters as well.
Oh, you do? Are they
Yep.
younger or older?
So I have a younger sister who lives in Vancouver, and then I have an older sister who lives in the outskirts of Toronto.
Hmm. So Kevin, before we go, I do have to ask you about your parents. They sound like you refer to them and they sound like just like wonderful, wonderful human beings.
Yeah, so it's a running joke in my house that I was out of the womb as a mother's boy, and I'll die as one. But that I love my mom so much; she's the part of the inspiration of my life. And
Wow.
my dad has always told me never to allow my personal restrictions to uh, prevent me from living a full and active lifestyle, whether that be from a physical, mental, or emotional perspective. So my parents have always been someone that helps me to eliminate barriers and to achieve prosperity for sure.
That's awesome. And that's so inspiring and also a reminder, to all the parents out there how, you can really one way or another, right? One way or another, you can encourage your kids' unique gifts. And I love the fact that it seems to me that they encourage each child to celebrate their unique gifts in life.
Yeah, that's one of the great privileges of living life. And I always tell people, if you don't pursue what you're passionate and what you believe your purpose is in life, then you're denying the rest of us a chance for innovative future, because we all have
Ooh,
a different way of looking at life. So I always encourage people to pursue their passion and purpose for that very reason.
Kevin, I love the fact that you said you're denying us. I love that. If you don't live your passion, you're denying us what you could offer the world. I love that.
Yeah, because we all have a different way of looking at life, going back to one of our earlier points about uh, contributing to the conversation of progress, and the only way we do that is to define what our passions are in life, right? So that's
Mhm. Yeah.
kind of the realm that I'm coming from that perspective for sure.
Yeah. I know I mentioned at the beginning about the fact that I've been to Ontario once, but what I did want to ask you, because you said your father is American, have you been to the United States at all?
Yeah, so my grandparents, my dad's parents still live in Detroit. So I am a regular over there in the States. In fact, through my podcast, I have formed a partnership with an organization called Visit Detroit,
No.
which is an organization that gets paid to promote Detroit and the region and to bring events to the region. And one of the reasons that we formed the partnership was because the 2024 NFL Draft is coming to Detroit, and I'm working with the organization to help promote the fact that the draft is coming to Detroit. So
Wow, that's huge.
I'm in Detroit regularly. In fact, I was just in Detroit in late October to help them promote the fact that the draft is coming. And as a thank you, we all went to a Lions game, for better or for worse. They have a suite there, so we all went in their suite for the day. We had a great chance to talk about how we're going to further the partnership. So I'm looking forward to returning to Detroit in the not too distant future to help promote some more events that are coming to the Motor City. I'm looking forward to it.
Kevin, I don't think you're going to ever be bored.
Well, Sandy, one of the tenets that I live my life by is I tell myself if I don't stay busy, I don't stay out of trouble. So I try to stay as active and as helpful anyway as I can, for sure.
Wow, what an inspiration. All right, Kevin. Well, we got to wrap up here. But before we go, is there anything we didn't get in that you want to tell everybody out there?
Yeah, I guess my parting message, Sandy, would be that inclusion is the gateway to independence. There's a sign in my office that says that. And, I always try to encourage people to include as many people in the conversation of progress as possible, because I believe that if we can create, like I said, bridges of unity that bring us together, we'll be in a better place in terms of creating societal progress. So bringing people together is something that I want people to always remember, and remember that inclusion is the gateway to independence.
That's a great thing to end with, Kevin, a great thing. But we got to get one more thing in. How can they find you? How can they find your podcast?
Yeah, so everything your listeners need to know about me is at kevinmcshan.com. They can also, and all my social media links are there. And they can also find the podcast wherever you get your podcast. They can always find it on YouTube by typing in "Let's Have This Conversation" and then my name afterwards, Kevin McShan, and all of my stuff comes up. So I'm pretty easy to find, and I want to thank you for allowing me this platform to engage in conversation. It's most appreciated.
Kevin, it's my pleasure. I love talking with you. It just lifts my spirit. It brings me not just joy, but it brings me pure joy. So I appreciate you taking the time to be on my show. It means a lot.
Fabulous. I had a wonderful time engaging in conversation, and I want to thank you for bringing joy and happiness to your listeners, and for those that listen to this podcast. And I know that fitness and maintaining a healthy lifestyle is something that we both have in common.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for the good work that you do to help people in that regard, and for raising your family as well, because I think motherhood is one of the hardest jobs that nobody gives you credit for. So thanks for being a fantastic mom and a gracious host today. It's most appreciated.
Kevin, my let's keep it real people. Come on. Kevin definitely kept it real. We would both appreciate this if you would share it, like it, and rate it. And you know what I'm going to say. Until next time, toodles. Bye, Kevin.
Bye, Sandy.